Hello, Namaste. In this video, we shall discuss external commercial borrowing ECB. External commercial borrowing is an important source of capital. It gives access to additional capital over and above the capital available in India to entrepreneurs. Since you invest more as you have more additional capital, the return generated will be more, and this will lead to a higher growth rate for the country, economic growth rate, and that is why ECB is promoted by governments of developing countries. So what is external commercial borrowing? These three words, external commercial borrowing, themselves will give you the definition of ECB or external commercial borrowing. This is a borrowing from external sources, means borrowing will not be done within India. The source will be outside India. Second term is borrowing, means the money which will come in the form of borrowing, not equity. And borrowing which will be done from external sources will be for commercial purposes. So borrowing from external sources for commercial purposes is external commercial borrowing. Now these borrowings can be either in foreign currency or in Indian rupee, but regulations are different for foreign currency, different for Indian rupee. Now everybody cannot borrow, because this external commercial borrowing, being a capital account transaction, is regulated by Reserve Bank of India guidelines. So borrowing can be done only by those resident entities who have been described as eligible resident entities in the Reserve Bank of India guidelines. We shall discuss who are the eligible resident entities. Now there are permitted end users. One thing is clear, the borrowing will be for commercial purposes, but all commercial purposes are not allowed for which external commercial borrowing can be done. So there are permitted end users, we shall discuss this also. Then there is minimum average maturity period of the borrowing, no maximum maturity period, minimum maturity period. Any borrowing will be subjected to this minimum average maturity period. We shall discuss this also. And the borrowings will be done within an overall cost ceiling. So external commercial borrowing is a borrowing for commercial purposes from external sources by eligible resident entities for permitted end use with a minimum average maturity period clause within a cost ceiling. So I hope we are able to understand what is external commercial borrowing, and this borrowing cannot be sourced from all external sources, only those sources which have been recognized by Reserve Bank of India in the regulation. There are two routes available for external commercial borrowings: automatic route and approval route. If anybody is borrowing up to 750 million US dollar in a particular year, he can borrow through automatic route. If the borrowing requirement is more than 750 million US dollar, then the borrowing can be done through approval route. In automatic route, the approval is given by authorized dealer. In approval route, borrowing is approved by Reserve Bank of India. But in both the cases, the application for borrowing will have to be moved through authorized dealer. Now ECB is a capital account transaction, and the minimum average maturity period for borrowing is 3 years. There is one exception. For manufacturing sector, up to 50 million borrowing can be done even with 1 year maturity period. Now, even in automatic route, the scrutiny of application will be done, but a scrutiny will be done by authorized dealer. In approval route, the application will be routed through authorized dealer to Reserve Bank of India, and sanction and scrutiny will be done by Reserve Bank of India, and it will be conveyed to the borrowing entity through authorized dealer. Now, who can borrow under ECB? Let us start with this proposition: who is eligible to borrow? And when there is a clause that who is eligible to borrow, means everybody cannot borrow. Only those who have been recognized under this scheme, they will be borrow. And the scheme says 3 categories of people can borrow: A, B and C. A, all entities eligible to receive foreign direct investment. Now this is again creating problem. We will have to understand who can receive foreign direct investment. Anyway, we will see in the next slide. Then certain institutions have been specifically mentioned. They are Port Trust of India, units in SEZ, SIDBI, Exim Bank. They are under category B. Now category A and category B can borrow in both foreign currency and Indian rupee. But there is another category which is under C, and they are registered entities engaged in microfinance activities, who are registered not for profit as profit companies, registered societies, trusts, cooperatives and non-government organizations. They are also allowed to borrow, but they can borrow only Indian rupee. They cannot borrow in foreign currency. So this is clear: 3 categories. A, all entities eligible to receive foreign direct investment. We will see who are they. B, port trusts, units in SEZ, SIDBI, Exim Bank. And third, registered entities engaged in microfinance activities. They are registered societies, trusts. They can borrow only in Indian rupee. Now the question I will answer: who can receive FDI? Because one of the component A category is those borrowers who can receive FDI. So FDI, very clear cut understanding has to be kept that individuals cannot receive FDI and partnership and proprietorship firms cannot receive FDI. So if individuals are excluded, partnership and proprietorships are excluded, who remains? Mainly remains companies. So both public limited companies and private limited companies. In public limited companies, both listed and unlisted, and private limited companies, limited liability partnership companies. Then there is another category, alternate investment funds, real estate investment trusts, and investment in infrastructure fund. These funds, which are created specifically for purposes well defined, alternate investment fund, real estate investment trusts, and investment infrastructure funds, they can receive FDI. So 4 categories of companies: public limited listed company, public limited unlisted company, private limited company, limited liability partnership, therefore, and another category is these funds which are created specifically for boosting the investment in infrastructure and real estate. Now there is question of partnership and proprietorship company. This is mentioned here. They can receive foreign funds but only from non-resident Indians, and that too on non-repatriation basis. Non-repatriation means the fund which has already come cannot be repatriated out of India, and therefore this is a separate category, and this does not fulfill the FDI criteria, because FDI criteria is when foreign investment comes, and that too on repatriable basis, only then it is called FDI. So we have been able to understand who can receive FDI. Now, 2 things: who can lend, means those who are outside want to lend to Indian companies, who are they, and what instruments will be used to borrow money from outside. So who can lend? Here also restriction is individuals cannot lend. Individuals cannot lend. Only entities can lend, and that entity should be resident of FATF, Financial Action Task Force compliant countries, or signatories to International Organization of Securities Commission. So those countries who are FATF compliant and those who are signatory to International Organization of Securities Commission, they can lend. Individuals can lend only if they are already foreign equity holders. This I will explain. Suppose a company, foreign company is already working in India, and if they are borrowing from outside, and out of that borrowing they are borrowing something from the shareholder of that company who is non-resident, these individuals are allowed to lend. But criteria is who is shareholder. Shareholder will qualify for onward lending only if he has minimum 25% of stake in the company which is operating in India. Now instruments of borrowing can be loans, bank loans, notes, bonds, debentures, foreign currency convertible bonds, foreign currency exchangeable bonds, financial lease, and sometimes trade credits beyond 3 years. If somebody is borrowing in INR, only one instrument is available, that is plain vanilla INR bonds. We have learnt in first slide that ECB means external commercial borrowing has to be done within a cost ceiling, and cost ceiling for foreign currency ECB is different. Cost ceiling for INR denominated ECB is different. For foreign currency ECB, the cost ceiling is LIBOR plus 450 basis points, and LIBOR we take is 6 months LIBOR. For Indian rupee borrowing, the benchmark will be Government of India security prevailing yield as on the date of borrowing plus 450 basis points. Let us understand this further. Suppose when I am borrowing and I am borrowing for a 10-year ECB, then on the date of borrowing, if the Government of India security yield is say 6%, then for me the ceiling will be 6% plus 450 basis point, that is 10.50%. Within that I have to borrow. Why the rates are higher for INR denominated ECBs? Because in INR denominated ECB, the exchange risk is borne by the lender. In foreign currency ECB, the exchange risk is borne by the borrower. Security question is very important. Whether security can be given by the borrower under ECB? The answer is yes. Borrower can give security to the lender under ECB. So what is so special about it that it is getting mentioned here? The special is that banks, all India financial institutions, NBFCs, they cannot provide any kind of guarantee on behalf of the borrower. The borrower is free to give security owned by him, either movable or immovable. The borrower can also give his personal guarantee, corporate guarantee, both are allowed. Now prohibited end use. We discussed that end use is not open, but not that restricted to. There is a negative list, and whenever there is a negative list, it means every other use is permitted which is not part of negative list. And this negative list contains real estate activities, investment in capital market, equity investment, working capital purposes, though exceptions are there, we will discuss those exceptions. General corporate purposes, here also exceptions are there, we will discuss those. Repayment of rupee loans, here also exceptions are there. And I want to remind you of recent development about these three: working capital purposes, general corporate purposes, and repayment of rupee loan. Before this new scheme came, these were strictly not allowed. But after ILFS crisis, there was liquidity crunch in Indian financial market, and to ease that liquidity, government gave some relaxation and they allowed external commercial borrowing for these three purposes also, but they have increased the minimum maturity, which is normal for 3 years. Here we will see when we discuss exceptions that minimum average maturity has been increased. Now, what are the exceptions available under end use heading? Means exceptions available as far as end use is concerned. So the first exception available is if the borrowing is done from foreign equity holders for working capital purposes, for general corporate purposes, or for repayment of rupee loans, the minimum average maturity period stands increased from 3 years to 5 years. Second exception is ECB raised for working capital purpose or general corporate purpose or for on lending by NBFCs for working capital purpose or for general corporate purpose, and the source is not foreign equity holder. In that case, the minimum average maturity period stands at 10 years. ECB raised for repayment of rupee loans, availed domestically for capital expenditure, or for onward lending by NBFCs for the same purpose, the minimum average maturity period will be of 7 years. Earlier, those entities who are under insolvency or restructuring, they were not allowed to borrow under ECB. But now, under the new scheme, they are also allowed to borrow. Condition is that they can borrow if the lenders, and if there are more than one lender, a group of lenders committee should recommend such borrowing, should allow such borrowing. If the lenders allow, any entity under restructuring or insolvency can also borrow under ECB route. So we have seen what is ECB and what are the restrictions and what are its features. And now we will discuss process of ECB, how it is done. So in case of both approval route and automatic route, the borrower has to fill a form which is known as ECB form. He will have to fill up the form and submit it to authorized dealer. Authorized dealer will scrutinize this and give clearance if the borrowing is under automatic route, and forward the application to Reserve Bank of India if the borrowing is under approval route. Now, once the borrower receives clearance for ECB, either from AD or from Reserve Bank of India, depending upon the route applicable, he can approach the lenders. Lenders will be outside India. So a borrower can approach through his intermediary agency, merchant banker, to different lenders outside India, and propagate their proposition for what they are borrowing. They can share their prospectus with them and they can get the commitments. But nothing beyond commitments. They can take the commitments. After that, they will have to obtain a loan registration number for Reserve Bank of India. That is called LRN. So LRN has to be obtained in both the cases, whether under automatic route or under approval route, and in both the cases LRN, loan registration number, will be released by Reserve Bank of India. And this is a very important number. This has to be obtained. Without this, you cannot start borrowing. Even though you have commitment, you cannot start accepting money from the lenders. You can start accepting money only when you have received the loan registration number from Reserve Bank of India. Once you have received loan registration number, you can start drawdown. Means after obtaining loan registration number, you can start accepting money from the lenders in your account, which has been opened specifically for this purpose. Once you have finished the borrowing, means your borrowing is over, then till the borrowing is repaid, means if the borrowing is for 5 years, for 5 years, for 6 years, 6 years, 7 years, 7 years, every month the borrower has to submit a form ECB2. So for application form ECB, and after borrowing for reporting purposes, every month form ECB2. And in between, important thing is to obtain loan registration number. Now, once you have received funds and you do not know how to utilize it, because there may be some time gap. So whether parking of funds can be done? Yes, parking of funds can be done. You can park the borrowed funds either in India or abroad, depending upon the purpose for which you have borrowed. But up to what time? Borrowing can be parked either abroad or in India for a period of 12 months. Depending upon the purpose, if the purpose is to purchase for machinery from outside India, you can park funds outside India. If the purpose is to utilize the proceeds of borrowing in India for establishing manufacturing units or for some trading units, whatever purpose may be, then you will have to bring that fund into India. Up to 12 months you can earn interest on the funds. Means if you have not utilized the funds and you have parked the funds either abroad or in India, you can earn interest up to 12 months. If you do not utilize funds and only park funds, after 12 months, no interest will be allowed. And that is a negative way of restriction. Now you have borrowed in US dollar, later on you find that euro is beneficial for me, you want to convert, you can convert.
Conversion from one currency to another currency is allowed. Conversion from a foreign currency to Indian rupee is allowed. But conversion from Indian rupee to foreign currency is not allowed. That this is a borrowing, and later on, after 1 year or 2 years of borrowing, both lender and borrower feel that let us convert this borrowing into equity. That will also be allowed. Conversion of borrowing into equity will be allowed. Only catch is that when you allow conversion, the norms applicable for FDI will become applicable. If both are agreeable, lender and borrower, and they fulfill the norms of foreign direct investment, conversion of debt into equity will be allowed. Now, a new clause of late submission have been added in this scheme recently. Otherwise, in earlier scheme, if you have missed anything, it will be treated as violation of FEMA. But now there is a clause of late submission. If you have not been able to either submit form ECB1, ECB or ECB2, for both there is a late submission fee, and you can regularize the position by depositing this penalty. Only if you do not pay this fees, then your violation will be sent for compounding, means for fixing the penalty under Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. But if you submit the ECB2 and ECB with late applicable fees, it will be treated as FEMA compliant and no further compounding will be done. So this is all about.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Please subscribe my channel